because I haven't known him that long, but he's impacted me well and helped me out a lot. So I think there's some other people here that could say some better words than I can. Not that I have any bad words to say. Sorry, Walter, I didn't mean that to sound so bad.
I'm talking less, don't worry.
Sure.
Are you talking or singing?
Less than
Talking.
Maybe both.
Don't tempt me, Brian.
So did you want to?
Sure. Sure. Walter asked me to sort of introduce people and to introduce people who wanted to speak. When I got this job, I was sort of flattered that Walter asked me to do this. I've known him since probably 1980 or so.
About
39 years. I was very flattered, but then I said, I really want to talk. So I'm going to take the privilege of the microphone, if we had one, to speak a little bit about Walter. I tried very hard to come up with a word to define Walter. And I got it narrowed down to two. So I'll do two as one that I feel that defines Walter, and one that defines the way that people see Walter. The first one is dedication. I have been on so many different venues with Walter. I have followed Walter being an alternate trustee, an alternate delegate, and I took those jobs basically because I knew that I wouldn't have to do anything, because Walter would never miss a meeting. Also, listening to Walter and debating with Walter during our terms as we were both going through the chairs at Central, we decided to rewrite the entire bylaws. Our bylaws were grossly outdated. So we had a lot of conversations about philosophy, about the way that governance should occur, about what should happen. And throughout that experience and throughout my experience as watching Walter as Speaker of the House, he is dedicated to the process, to make sure that things are done correctly. Some people think that, that's a little retentive. But he wants to make sure that whatever decisions people make are fair and adhere to process. So he has written bylaws changes and motions for things that he was not in favor of, but he wanted the process to be correct and the discussion around it to be correct, so that nothing could be challenged. Just that dedication to no matter where he was and what he was doing, and then speaking with him about his roles outside of dentistry and his synagogue and elsewhere. I have a CV. It's very long. You don't want me to read it. He's done everything from the local level to the state level to the national level, and it's quite extensive, and I applaud him for that. The second word that comes to mind is the way that people see him, and that word is respect. Right now, here we have 2 past presidents. If it weren't for a wait, we'd have 3 past presidents of NJDA. Executive director, current president of NJDA. I think that says quite a bit. No matter if you agree with Walter or disagree with Walter, I think people respect his commitment, respect his integrity, and respect the process as he does. So that's my spiel. I think we'll go to past president, Dr. Dan McCrants.
Okay.
It was nice.
All right.
Nothing. It's all up here.
It's all there.
Well, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Dan Krantz. I've known Walter through the NJDA for over 30 years. Since I was trustee of the Middlesex County Dental Society, my wife Lois and I have known Walter and Elaine for over 25 years. Walter has had a distinguished term as Speaker of the New Jersey Dental Association House of Delegates. This position was very well suited to Walter because we all know how much he likes to speak. He attended every NJDA trustees meeting and presided at every House of Delegates meeting for over 28 years without missing a meeting. He has also contributed at the ADA level. Walter has been either an alternate delegate or delegate to every single ADA meeting, convention I can remember. His major interest and expertise was in governance, displayed at the state level by his rewriting of our state constitution and bylaws. His reputation and expertise in constitution and bylaws was known throughout ADA land. Our ADA is separated into 17 districts. Each district is either a separate state, if large enough, like New York, Florida, Texas, or combined into several states, like Massachusetts, Vermont, Connecticut, Rhode Island, or our district is the 4th district, which is composed of New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland, District of Columbia, the Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, and the armed, or let's call it the uniformed services. As a matter of fact, and the Public Health Service. Walter was an officer in the Public Health Service. Okay. We were at a District 4 caucus. I think it was in 1995 in Orlando, something like that.
Yeah.
Anyway, what the purposes of the caucuses are to discuss a lot of the resolutions that will be discussed at the ADA level. So here we were at a caucus, and Walter had proposed an amendment to the ADA bylaws. And we were discussing the amendment that he had proposed. During this meeting, a representative from another district comes in and they asked to borrow Walter. They wanted to borrow him to explain what the bylaws change was all about. As soon as he came in the room and asked to borrow Walter, everyone in the 4th district unanimously and simultaneously stood up and said, "You can keep him."
It's true.
Thankfully, they returned Walter to us.
We should have held out for 2 delegates and an alternate to be named later.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay.
It's a true story.
Okay, the last time I saw Walter prior to his stroke was at the NGA President's Dinner Dance on Friday, June 1st. Walter had a stroke 2 days later. Several of us, myself and my wife Lois, Brian and Roberta, and Joe Krulowitz, took it upon ourselves to clean up and clean out Walter's office. Lois and Roberta took over the charts to put them in order, and Lois took over the accounts receivable, which she is still doing. Brian, Joe, and myself took over disassembling the office. By disassembling, I mean taking apart chairs, removing x-ray units from the walls, collating and collecting all the equipment, and bringing it to a storage facility. The office had to be vacated by the end of July, and this was now like the middle of June, and we had to get this office taken care of. For those of you who can't imagine the extent of what we had to do. Think of your own office. If someone said to you and said, you have to totally clean out your office in 2 months to have it to the point where it is swept clean, can you imagine the extent that we had to do? But we managed to do it. Okay. All this was in addition to having to run our own practices. This responsibility took up most of our summer, this past summer. I visited Walter at his rehabilitation center. This was, I think, in the middle of June. We had been working for about 2 or 3 weeks in disassembling his office. And I went over to Walter and I said, Walter, you know what my biggest fear in life is? And he said, what? I said, that you would make a miraculous recovery and have to put everything back. Well, he hasn't made a miraculous recovery, but he has made some recovery. He has a little bit more function than he did after he had his setback, and it's a day-to-day progressive thing. Well, we all wish Walter a good future. We hope that he remains healthier and continues his recovery, and he has the best wishes of all of us. Walter, we love you.
Good job, thank you very much.
Very nice.
Excuse me, ladies and gentlemen, your salads are going to be coming out in just a moment. If we could just have like 3 minutes just to serve you that, and then we can continue if that'd be okay. I don't want to interrupt anyone's speech, okay?
A few things that Dr. Krantz said that sparked memories in my head that ties into what I was saying about respect. Walter has worked at the ADA level as a delegate to the House, rewriting the Constitution and bylaws, or on that committee to Constitution and bylaws, and on the ADA council called CJA. Last summer, in rehab, Walter was visited by 3 ADA trustees who took the time to drive to his rehab. They had all worked on CJA with him to present Walter with a ADA presidential citation for his work at the ADA level, especially on the Constitution and bylaws. Underlining respect for Walter. Moving along in our past presidents, Brian, if you'd like to say something.
Well, Brian, thank you very much for asking me to speak. And I'm going to talk about the lighter side of Walter. I don't know if it's a word, but Walter is a triviaista, particularly with politics and sports. And I'm trying to think back how many years ago was the first time I really met Walter. I think it was a time when I was the alternate trustee from Bergen County. And I went to a Board of Trustees meeting, and after lunch, I saw this guy at the end of the table gradually falling asleep. And Stan Martin was a trustee, and I nudged him and I said, what's going on with that guy? Is he bored? Does this meeting end now? Or he goes, no, that's the Speaker of the House. He's probably bored, there's nothing else to say. Moving on. I never really realized, you see, Walter's a diabetic. And after lunch, sometimes the blood sugar fluctuates. And that causes him at times to nod off. My first conversations with Walter were at a breakfast meeting, serious conversation, where we had sponsors that we were honoring. And he decided to bring up some trivia questions about college football teams. And he and I disagreed on what is a Division I team versus the names that he was. Name as many football teams as you can whose mascots are one word not ending in an S. Right? Single mascot.
No, they're nicknames.
Well, they're nicknames. Nicknames meant. But anyway, we went on with that, and he was named. I said, "That's not a Division I team." Well, yes. So that's one of the trivia type things that Walter does. The other thing I found with Walter is that he definitely really doesn't care about being a fashionista. In fact, I think it took him several years to get rid of that blue blazer.
Oh no, we still have it.
You still have
It's still there.
We got another one.
it? But he did stop wearing it to the Board of Trustees meeting.
Oh, I don't know.
Yes, he did. But, and Walter and I got to be closer friends. And in fact, I realized that it was a friendship that even if he disagreed with you on things, that wasn't going to be broken. It's one of the rare things that we see today, where people can disagree, and disagree very deeply on some subjects, but it doesn't break the friendships. And I think one of the things you enjoyed most is when we went to the Army football games.
Oh, yeah.
I'm a graduate of West Point, and I have season tickets, and I have had for years. And the last couple of seasons, I took Walter to some of the games. But unfortunately, Walter, I don't know how we're going to get there this year, because our seats are not in a section that are amenable to a wheelchair. But the first time he went to the game, we're sitting there, and they had this cannon that they shoot T-shirts with. And we're sitting there, and all of a sudden I see this thing bouncing all into my lap. And I said, "Where's it?" He said, "Oh, that hit me in the head." And here it was as a T-shirt. A T-shirt that said Army, West Point. So it was his to wear, but he decided, "I don't want to wear it. You can have it." I still have the T-shirt.
It didn't fit.
But Walter, it's wonderful being your friend, and it's something I will remember and cherish for the rest of my life.
Thank you.
Staying with the NJDA presidential theme, our current NJDA president, Tom Rossi, would like to say a few words.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you. I first met Walter maybe 18, 20 years ago when I first became a delegate to the House of Delegates. And I was really very honored last week when Michelle Reynolds contacted me that she had been speaking with Walter and invited me here this evening. I said, absolutely, it'd be my pleasure. The thing that you notice with Walter when you're at a House of Delegates meeting is that he's in control of the meeting, of course. So he knows exactly what he's doing. Everything is follows sequence. He knows his protocol. He knows parliamentary procedure. But it wasn't until I became a trustee for the Board of Trustees of NJDA about 8 years ago, that you really appreciate Walter's knowledge. That you really see the side of Walter that pulls everything together. What was mentioned before about the bylaws changes, about motions. Walter knows exactly how a motion has to be worded. He gets it down pat. He knows exactly how the bylaws change has to be worded. He says, you know something? Let me think about it. I'll get back to you. If he can't give you the answer right then and there, he wanted to make sure that it was correct. And again, it was said before, whether or not he agreed with what was being proposed, he wanted the wording correct so that nothing could be questioned. And he even said himself many times, I don't agree with this. It's private meetings. I don't agree with this, but I'm going to get the word so that no one can dispute the way it's worded. The one thing with Walter, whether it was here at Central, your central component, NJDA, his participation in NJDA on committees, on councils, his participation on the national level with the American Dental Association, is you really saw Walter's love and commitment to organized dentistry. And if we had more people with the stamina and determination and the love of our profession, of our organized profession, we can really go very far in the tripartite system. So Walter, thank you very much for your service. The fellow line officers join me in wishing you well, and I was very happy to see you at the House of Delegates meeting last week when I was installed. That really was very important to me that you were there, and we expect to see you at many House of Delegates meetings in the future. Thank you, Walter.
Staying with the NJDA theme, Executive Director Mark Mizell would like to say.
Yes, good evening, everyone. People have talked about how long they knew Walter. I actually met Walter for the first time when he was 3.
And you were 6.
And I was 6. I planted Dan. Actually, some of you who were at the House of Delegates meeting heard this story. This is a true story, actually. The first time I met Walter, and he will confirm this because he is not shy about confirming things, is when I deposed him in a lawsuit in which he was working for an entity in New Jersey, and this involved, were they involved in operating, Walter was just an employee at the place, but were they involved in operating a dental service corporation in violation of the law in New Jersey? And literally, I deposed Walter. Now, that is a true story. That's the first time that I met Walter, and Walter is nodding.
Yep, absolutely.
After spending 3 years in jail, but
You or him?
we were cellmates. It worked out very well. The truth is that it was very interesting. After that, of course, I did have really the privilege of spending a lot of time with Walter. Everything that you've heard about his dedication could not be truer. It's quite amazing. A story that I know Walter is extremely proud about was what happened actually at the ADA, because you can't, for those of you who have not been there and been to the House of Delegates, everything is debated. There is nothing that ever passes in that house that just runs by. Now, Walter was spending time on a major piece revising the bylaws of the House of Delegates of the ADA, not the bylaws of the House of Delegates, the bylaws of the ADA. And this was a major event. Everything is contentious at the ADA. And I know what Walter is extraordinarily proud about, and should be, by the way, is that after the bylaws were amended, put out for discussion, there were a number of comments that were received, questions that were received, they were answered. That came for a vote at the ADA and for discussion at the ADA. There was not a single person who raised a hand for discussion. It was unbelievable. That has it's remarkable at the ADA for that to happen. And I'm not good, Walter was instrumental in having that happen, which kind of showed a sense of impact that he had. In New Jersey, I worked regularly with Walter, especially in dealing things with the New Jersey Dental Association, House of Delegates, the bylaws, which he truly loves, of course. And what I would add to what Joe said was that unlike so many individuals who take tasks on, when Walter takes something on, it is done promptly, it's done with a smile, and it's done really well. And it is quite wonderful to see that level of an individual as a volunteer who will spend that kind of time and do it with so well and love what he does. Now, also we've talked a little bit about some of the trivia that and other things that Walter loves. One story I've got to tell you is that we've gone to Washington to some various, they call them legislative conferences, and you visit the Hill, so-called Congress. Well, I mean, that was Walter's love. He just couldn't wait to go down every year. And we drive in a car together, and it just kind of drove me a little nuts. When, we pass a building, and he'd say, "You know what that building's called? That building's called whatever the name was." And he mentioned the name, and he said, "And then he'd tell you about the family of the people who the name of the building was after." And one day we're going down, and I finally said, I said, "Walter, that's great. You've named the building. Do you know the name of his daughter?"
And he did.
No, actually, he didn't.
Because he had a son.
He didn't. And he said, and I said, "By the way, I don't know if he had a daughter or not. I just wanted to see if But there was, what that exemplified really was a passion also, which is a word really that does fit well with Walter's love of working with bylaws and working with the association. I mean, there was a joy in that passion that Walter has. And so it is just such a pleasure to be here and to honor and acknowledge really the extraordinary contribution that Walter has made to the association. So, I really couldn't be happier to be here. We all wish you a full recovery. We truly hope that happens. But you're a wonderful person. Elaine, you're wonderful to put up with.
Thank you.
And Elaine, you're terrific. I didn't mean it that way.
It's fine. No, I know.
Thank you so much. It is just wonderful. It's nice for the family to be here, and just we all applaud you, Walter. Thank you so much.
That was very good.
Two other executive level staff were supposed to be here, Jim Schultz and Joan Monaco. They both had last minute things that called them away. Joan has forwarded a letter which is quite long because she has a lot to say about you. I'm not going to read it to make this longer, but many of the things that have been said already about dedication, wit, trivia, etc., are in there. The other person that we have from NJDA is Phyllis Cortazzo. I don't know how many people know her. She is the executive secretary of the association. We all know that executive secretaries are the real glue that holds any office and association together. She has worked very, very closely with Walter, and she's here today giving him respect. Okay, so moving on from NJDA, is there anybody from Central who would like to say a word? Michelle. Do you want to do your slideshow?
Oh wait, I need to project it. I'm getting it.
The salad.
Sure. Michelle and slideshow, maybe we'll do that. And for her remarks, is there anybody else who would like to say something? I know that John would like to say a few words. John?
No. We practice a profession and opposed to a job. And I think that the person in this room is probably more of a profession than a job is Walter. I always felt, and when I started practice dentistry more than 50 years ago, dentistry was composed of dentists, supervised by dentists. It was before the board of that we have now in the state, which has lay people on it and that type of thing. But we were responsible for maintaining our own profession, and which I think is important. Walter has maintained the fact and guarded our profession throughout the years. It's one thing to drill, fill, and bill, but it's another thing to maintain a profession that is dedicated for the benefit of our patients and for the public at large. And that's not an easy thing to do. If you let it go and other people take it over, they have no concept of what our responsibilities are, what our duties are, and how dedicated we have to be to maintain the profession as it should be. And Walter has, by his concentration of making sure that what we do as a profession maintains itself on the up and ready, has dedicated himself to, and I think everybody in the state knows this, and even in the national organization knows that he has probably done more than anybody I certainly know to maintain our profession at the level that it is. Walter, thank you very much.
I'm Tim McCabe. I'm a pediatric dentist, and I started practicing in 1995. And like a lot of young dentists, you know, I was encouraged to go through the chairs and through the presidency here at Central Dental Society. I've had wonderful support from everybody. Tom Burns, Mike Boylan told me to become a dentist. You know, Dave Goldberg helped out. When it came to those meetings, though, you know, the week before, Walter really made sure I understood the parliamentary procedure. And if there was any question and I was stressing and getting in front of people and speaking and being nervous for the first time in a professional organization, just being new in dentistry, never mind stand in front of, you know, back then we had 50, 60 people at some of the meetings, the monthly meetings. Walter, you know, I knew once I spoke to Walter, I had my facts straight, I could do the procedure properly and run the meeting properly, and it gave me a lot of confidence. So, Walter, I really thank you a lot for that. And I know I'm not the only one you've helped with that. You know, everyone really, once again, just kind of reiterate what everyone said. We really appreciate what you've done for us and for the profession as a whole. And, you know, I'm immensely grateful, and, you know, which is why I'm here. And it's so important, and it's great to see a lot of old faces, too, that I haven't seen in a while. Thank you, Walter. Appreciate it.
Anybody else from the Central family? No? Okay, the other people that I would like to introduce, I think everybody knows Elaine. Adam, Walter's oldest son. And Don, his only brother. Would either of you like to say anything?
I'm good. Sorry.
I just drove to Tennessee to be here.
Other than the slideshow that Michelle has and Michelle words, I think that I'm done. I would just like to say that it has been a pleasure and a privilege to do this and to be around Walter for the last almost 40 years, and I am proud that Walter considers me a friend. Or we call this a night except for this slideshow.
I think.
Is there a treasurer's report?
Yes, Walter's going to talk.
Okay. It is now time for Walter to give a few words.
Let me take that bag off behind.
Matter? I don't think it matters.
Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Stand up.
After hearing all this, I feel like I don't have to show up at my own funeral anymore. The irony about being Speaker of the House is I'm the one person that can't speak. Everyone else can speak, I can't speak. So I want to thank you all for being here. It was truly a pleasure doing all of this, all the work for you. I can honestly say that every time I did a job, you got my best. I can look you each in the eye and say, I did my best. But you know what? In my mind, it was never good enough. Like most dentists, I'm an extreme perfectionist. And if you think I'm bad, Elaine is much worse. Elaine believes in perfection 100% of the time. That's what she expects. And she also told me, you don't get a compliment unless you exceed expectations. Put those two statements together. She did compliment in April of '94. I got a complaint. A compliment I'm still reading. Anyway,
That was it?
now, she also believes in tough love. And with me, it's been even tougher since I had my stroke to inspire me to work hard to get better. For you trivia buffs, what happened on July 4th, 1939? Anyone remember? No. Anyone know? Anyone know what happened? I'll give you a clue. It happened at Yankee Stadium.
Lou Gehrig.
Right. Lou Gehrig made his speech. He knew he was dying. And as one of Danny's jokes is, isn't it funny that Lou Gehrig died of a disease named after himself? But anyway.
I never said that.
Yes, you did. Anyway. Here's a man who knows he's dying. And he said he had a tough break, but he considered himself the luckiest man in the face of the earth. And by the way, that speech was not written. He said it off the cuff. Well, I had a tough break. I was just 70 in February. And at this point in my life, I expect I'd be on true cruise control, not facing the toughest challenge of my life, the biggest challenge, getting better from the stroke. And I'm left-handed, and my left hand affected my left side. All right? But I have to be grateful. So I'm missing my left side. I'm getting better. I can't do dentistry. I lost my practice. I'm not driving. But I have to be thankful for what I still have. What I have is my right side. The stroke didn't affect my ability to speak or think. Thank God. I did not lose the love of my wife or my family. And I still feel the same way about them. And I have all my friends, which I didn't lose. All right? So you gotta be thankful for what I still have. So I thank you all for that. Now, it's been mentioned my propensity for trivia and stuff. I'll tell you my main topics are sports, the English monarchy, and U.S. Presbyterian government. Since I've been in home the last 6 months, I've read biographies of James Polk, James Madison, John Adams, and I'm halfway through James Madison.
The bestseller list.
Everyone else would call it boring, unfascinating. But I'll tell you the kind of stuff that can make boring stuff interesting. I'll tell you a story about U.S. government. 2 stories that will make studying this stuff can take a boring, make it interesting. One day, Tip O'Neill is Speaker of the House in the late 80s, and he's actually presiding. And House opens with a period where you can talk about anything you want. Now, you know, Congressman Scalise got shot for practicing for the baseball game. That's a long time. They've been doing that for years. So one day I turn on the House.
Shooting congressman?
No.
Practicing for
the game is a long tradition. I turn on C-SPAN, and there's the House, and Congressman Silvio Conte from Massachusetts is on the floor, a Republican from Pittsfield, Western Massachusetts. The last Republican to ever represent Massachusetts in the House. Everyone's been Democrat since. Well, apparently they had the baseball game the day before, and apparently the Republicans won, and he was going to rub it in. So he gets to the floor and starts singing, "Take Me Out to the Ball Game." The Democrats take umbrage at this and raise a point of order that singing is not permitted on the floor of the House. Tip O'Neill, without missing a beat, says, "I don't agree. I'm not going to give you that objection. One could hardly call what you just heard singing." Silvio hit the floor laughing, off the cuff. A better story. I'm glad there are no kids here for this one. Anyway, anyone ever hear of Howell Heflin? I didn't think anyone would. Howell Heflin was a senator from Alabama, and if you were going to draw a picture of a distinguished Southern gentleman, it's Howell Heflin. Short tie, overweight, thick drawl, talks slowly. You look at this guy and you say he's got to be from Alabama. He was a former Chief Justice of the Alabama Supreme Court. Well, anyway, Ted Kennedy is between marriages. He wasn't married to Victoria yet, and he was very active on the dating scene. And he took a young lady to the French Riviera, and the Kennedys love boats. They rented a boat, and they go out on the Mediterranean, and they were doing things which one only should do at dark and alone. And apparently an aircraft flew overhead and took pictures of them in the act of doing what they were doing, and the pictures circulated around the Senate. And senators were looking at this, the picture, and Ted Kennedy goes over to, Hal Heflin walks over to Ted Kennedy and said, "Ted, I saw the picture. I see you've changed your stance on offshore drilling." You can't make that stuff up. You understood that, right, Adam? Adam's the father of my grandchild. He understood it. So those kind of things make history fun. Those kind of stories. And I was going to say about my wife, how tough she is. She is really tough. In fact, she's tied with Lois. They can fight out who's tougher.
I don't let him get away with anything.
Right, absolutely. I tell people that she doesn't like it, I don't care. But I say that if my wife ever joined the Marines, the drill instructors would all quit. Okay? And one day, we were having a day where everything I did was wrong, everything I said I was wrong, everything I was thinking was wrong. So
What dinner was that? What dinner were you at?
So anyway, I thought I got her, and I said, "You have to like my taste in women." And she said, "No."
I didn't say that.
It's a good story, Elaine. Go with it. It's fake news. Go with it.
Anyway, I really want to thank you all for this. Working, my love of ADA, and it was really profound. And I'll regret not doing this, but I have a forced retirement. I cannot thank the Roshans, the Kranzes, and the Krulises enough for helping me after my stroke. And they did it knowing that I could never repay them. That's true charity. And Art, there's a membership story in there someplace. A benefit of membership. Feel free to use my story. The help you get from friends.
The one from the Mediterranean?
I've never been to the Mediterranean, sorry. And Elaine would not go on a boat with me anyway. So thank you very much. So feel free to use that as a story. And I want to thank you, and I'm very grateful for Elaine to taking me to component meetings this year and board meetings. She's almost become a surrogate member of Central. So thank you much for your love and all your help. Elaine's a dental hygienist. I got to tell you the story how we met.
Nobody's eating tonight.
I got to tell one more story about the first time Art and I met. I worked for Joel Sokol 2 days a week, and I was associate in a dentist dental office in Manville for 2.5 days a week. And as Art mentioned, NJDA sued my employer. They were questioning whether it was lay ownership and who approved treatment plans, whether it was lay people or dentists. So I testified before Art. Art deposed me. And in fact, until the day I retired, I kept a transcript of that deposition next to my office. And every now and then I actually read it. I wanted to see if my answers were stupid as they were. Because, and by the way, every time I presided at a House meeting, on the way home, I thought of ways I made mistakes that could have done it better. I'm a profound perfectionist, all right? And Phyllis can tell you that. I'm a proofreader from hell. And despite that, I still respect her, and it was a pleasure working with you, Phyllis. All right? The hardest thing to do is the first draft. The first draft is the hard part. Proofreading the mistakes is much easier. But she got the first draft done. And I told her when I first met her that I'm going to pick you apart with mistakes, And it doesn't mean I don't lose respect for you, at all, because she did a great job and I thank you. She also set up the house meetings. I didn't have to worry about how many roses were set out or what. She did all of that. And she actually sat next to me at every board meeting and house meetings, and she's still here. So thank you very much. My wife and I tell our story briefly. So I worked for Joel Sokol, and he was being sued by NJDA, and I'm deposed by Art. Let me tell you about this place I worked. It was in Irvington, New Jersey. And Joel, the main office, they had branch offices. I worked, Manville became one of his branch offices. And the reason I was deposed because I was at a branch office. There were two people that hung around the place all the time. One was an attorney named George Francanero, who was one of Joel Sokol's attorneys. He was a former law partner of Brendan Byrne, by the way, the former governor. The other one was a guy named Al Molinari. Now, does the SCI still exist? The SCI, State Commission of Investigation. Okay, they were investigating this dental operation. I read that they went bankrupt and closed up on this ledger because the SCI put them out of business. But the SCI also investigated mob activity in Atlantic City. And in the article about the SCI, I read that they were investigating this dental clinic and that they were talking to this guy named Al Molinari, who were on a first name basis. It turns out he was a mob enforcer. All right? Now let's go back to George Francanero. Does that name ring a bell with anybody?
Yeah.
I know that you know, I know that some of you, you probably know. George was the attorney, we were on a first name basis, and George had an older sister, right, Tom? The older sister was Conchetta Francanero. Anyone have an idea who Conchetta Francanero was? Connie Francis, right. So this operation was connected to Francaneros and Molinaris. All right, let's eat. I'm done. I want to thank you for everything. Hopefully Elaine will bring me back to meetings, and I'll see you all from time to time.
Thank you for being here.
Now I'm hungry, so let me get back. Was that okay?